I want us to look at our third function called the hyperbola. If you look at the mother graph of the hyperbola, it will say y is equals to k over x. Remember, if k is positive, the graph will be in the first and the third quadrant. But k, let's try and make k the subject of the formula here. And why do we say k is positive here and also k is positive here? If we're looking for k, we're going to say k is equals to, you cross multiply, x times y. Let's look at the first quadrant. You take the value of x that will touch this graph, and you take the value of y that will touch that graph, the corresponding y value. How is x this side? It is positive. How is y this side? It is also positive. So a positive and a positive will give us a positive. So if it is in the first quadrant, we know that the value of k or a in any particular case, it will be positive. Why is it also positive on the third quadrant? Let's look at this one. How is x here? X is negative. And how is y here? And y will be negative. And what is negative times negative? It will give us positive. That is why we say if k is positive, the graph will be in these two quadrants. The very same way, if it is negative, it will be in these two quadrants, in that way. But at times, we can shift this graph along the x-axis as well as along the y-axis. So if we shift it to the right, it will be negative. If we shift it to the left, we are going to add positive. If we shift it up along the y-axis, it will be plus. If we shift it down, it will be negative. Let's make an example where we've done both shifts. Maybe we'll shift it to the right once and shift it up twice. What type of a graph will we have? Remember, it will give us the full general equation of the hyperbola. It will be y is equals to k over x minus p plus q. This is where it has been shifted in both ways, both horizontally and vertically. We've shifted it towards the right because it is positive. It is negative here. If it was negative, if this was positive, we're going to shift it to the left. Now, let's sketch it quickly. I'm just going to make an example. Let's say this is 1. Let's make this 2. Right. What is it that I've just sketched here? These are called the asymptote. This is called the X-Asymptote. This is called the Y-Asymptote. Remember, the Y-Asymptote cuts the Y-axis. The X-Asymptote cuts the X-axis. Now, if my K was positive, I'm no longer going to consider this Cartesian plane, but I'm going to consider the new Cartesian plane that is formed by my asymptotes. If K is positive, the graph will be in the first quadrant and the third quadrant. But if K is negative, it was going to be in this quadrant and this quadrant. For this case, let us say K is positive. Then our graph will be in this quadrant and this quadrant. But what do I know? I need to know ukuze ngidobele graph sidinga ama-point awu-4. Number one, I need to know it's located on my x-axis. We call that the X-Intercept. I will need to find this point first, the X-Intercept. Ithola kanjani X-Intercept? That is where we make the value of y equals to 0. Then you'll get the value of x, which we call the X-Intercept. Point number 2 is called the Y-Intercept. How do you find the Y-Intercept? All that you need to know there is to make x equal to 0. Because at this position, there are no x's, or x babhalwa lapha, so lapho x ubani u0. That's the second point that we need. The third point is to see what is the x-asymptote, the x-asymptote. Asymptote is the point where the graph ingayithindi khona. Asimtholi ugraph lapho, asymptote. Asiyitholi graph lapho. This is the y-asymptote. Ne graph ayitholakali ithinta lo line. So the graph will never touch that line. Abanye bathi asimtholi asymptote. Asimtholi ku graph elapho. Right, this is called the y-asymptote, this is called the x-intercept. In terms of P and Q, the value of P then is called the x-asymptote. What will be the value of P looking at this graph? Remember, P is x-asymptote. So what will be the value of P there? It will just be 1. What is the value of Q looking at this graph? Kumuluti stay Q, stay y-asymptote. Sibheka ke line wethu obhale ngama-dotted line othinta ama-y-axis. In this particular case, the value of Q will be 2. Khumbula ukuthi masifuna ama-graphs sisuke sifunani? So sifuna yonke into ekhona lapho ngaphandle kokabani kuka-x no-y. In this particular case, asikuthinti lokhu, so sifuna u-k no-p no-q. Therefore, it is important kulula ukubona u-p no-q because u-p yini i-x asymptote. Your eyes are the most powerful tool in your mathematics. X asymptote, dotted lines, this is the value of p, and that will be the value of q. You'll be left with k. You'll be given 1 point to use. Lelo point ozobe ulitholile uzolisebenzisa yona ukuthola u-k ukuze umfake esikhundleni sa-x no-y. Lelo point ozobe unalo. We'll do examples with you soon. Say our former points abalulekile. Number 1, x asymptote. How do you find it? We make y equal to 0, which is this point in this particular case. Number 2, y asymptote. How do you find it? We make x equal to 0. Number 3, the x asymptote. Number 4, the y asymptote. Thank you.